Chapter 15. He hadn't changed much in 6 years. His appearance was even worse than mine. The Tranter Intelligence plastic surgeons hadn't worked their magic on him. I couldn't help but notice the pain etched on his face as he attempted a grin. His thick grey eyebrows shot up in surprise when he saw Millen, but he quickly stepped back to allow us to enter before shutting the door behind us. The room was sparsely furnished and appeared to be rarely used. The floor was made of rough stone, with only a single fur rug in front of a brazier. A little girl sat on the rug, drinking from a large mug. As we entered, she stood up and backed against the wall, staring at us with wide eyes. Her pale red hair was cut straight across her forehead, much like Julie's, and she wore a smock made of dyed red fur that nearly matched her hair. A little smudge of milk on her upper lip looked like a white mustache. She was a young girl, around 5 years old, with deep-set dark eyes like Julie's. She watched me gravely, without any surprise or fear. It was clear that she knew who I was. "Rindy," Lyric said quietly, not taking his eyes off me. "Go into the other room." Rindy didn't move, still staring at me. Then she moved towards Millen, looking up intently at the pattern of embroideries on her dress. It was very quiet until Lyric added, in a gentle and curiously moderate voice, "Do you still carry a skein, Race?" I shook my head. "There's an ancient proverb on Terra about blood being thicker than water, Lyric. That's Julie's daughter. I'm not going to kill her father right before her eyes." My rage spilled over then, and I bellowed, "To hell with your damned Drytown feuds and your filthy toad god and all the rest of it." Lyric said harshly, "Rindy, I told you to get out." "She needn't go." I took a step towards the little girl, a wary eye on Lyric. "I don't know quite what you're up to, but it's nothing for a child to be mixed up in. Do what you damn please. I can settle with you any time. The first thing is to get Rindy out of here. She belongs with Julie and, damn it, that's where she's going." I held out my arms to the little girl and said, "It's over, Rindy, whatever he's done to you. Your mother sent me to find you. Don't you want to go to your mother?" Lyric made a menacing gesture and warned, "I wouldn't." Mellon darted swiftly between us and caught up the child in her arms. Rindy began to struggle noiselessly, kicking and whimpering. But Millen took 2 quick steps and flung an inner door open. Lyric took a stride towards her. She whirled on him, fighting to control the furious little girl, and gasped, "Settle it between you, without the baby watching!" Through the open door, I briefly saw a bed and a child's small dresses hanging on a hook, before Millen kicked the door shut, and I heard a latch being fastened. Behind the closed door, Rindy broke into angry screams, but I put my back against the door. "She's right. We'll settle it between the 2 of us. What have you done to that child?" "If you thought—" Lyric stopped himself in mid-sentence and stood watching me without moving for a minute. Then he laughed. "You're as stupid as ever, Race. Why, you fool, I knew Julie would run straight to you if she was scared enough. I knew it would bring you out of hiding. Why, you damned fool!" He stood mocking me, but there was a strained fury, almost a frenzy of contempt behind the laughter. "You filthy coward, Race! 6 years hiding in the Tranter Zone. 6 years and I gave you 6 months. If you'd had the guts to walk out after me, after I rigged that final deal to give you the chance, we could have gone after the biggest thing on Coruscant. We could have accomplished this together, instead of wasting years spying, dodging, and hunting. And now, when I finally find you, all you want to do is run back to safety. I thought you were braver than this. I won't do Everin's dirty work." Lyric swore obscenely. "Everin! Do you really think I knew he would get to you too? That girl, and you've managed to ruin everything I did there too." Suddenly he pulled out his knife and charged at me. "Get away from that door!" I stood my ground. "You'll have to kill me first, and I won't fight you, Lyric. We'll settle this, but we'll do it my way for once, like Earthmen." "You coward! Get your knife out, you son of an ape!" "I won't, Lyric." I stood my ground. I had outsmarted Drytowners in a shegri bet. I knew Lyric, and I knew he wouldn't stab an unarmed man. "We fought once with the Keyferg, and it didn't solve anything. This time we'll do it my way. I threw my knife away before I came here. I won't fight." He lunged at me. Even I could see that it was a fake attack, and I remembered Dallas's warning to drive the knife through my palms. But reflexes took over, and I lunged forward, grabbing his wrist and the knife. He twisted his wrist, and I felt the knife pierce my jacket with a tearing sound, and then I felt the sharp pain as it sliced through my flesh. Then the pain burned through my ribs, and I felt hot blood. I wanted to kill Lyric, to strangle him with my bare hands, but at the same time, I didn't want to fight him. I wasn't even angry with him. Mellon flung open the door, screaming, and suddenly the toy was free, buzzing toward Lyric's eyes. I yelled, but there was no time to warn him. I lunged forward, butting him in the stomach. He gasped and fell out of the way of the toy. It buzzed in frustration, hovering in the air. Lyric writhed in agony, clutching his shirt, while I turned to Mellon in fury, but then stopped. She had acted out of desperation, trying to balance the scales between a man without a weapon and one with a knife. Lyric gasped, his voice hoarse. "Didn't want to use it. Rather fight clean." He opened his fist, and suddenly there were two of the buzzing toys in the room, and one was diving at me. I threw myself to the floor, and the last piece of the puzzle fell into place. Everin had made the same deal with Lyric as he had with me. I rolled over, dodging the toy. In the room behind me, a child's screams pierced the air. "Daddy! Daddy!" Suddenly the birds dropped from the sky and fell to the ground like stones. Rindy ran across the room, her skirts flying, and grabbed one of the vicious creatures in each hand. "Rindy!" I yelled. "No!" She stood there, shaking, tears streaming down her face, holding the toys tightly. Dark veins stood out on her temples. "Break them, Daddy!" she pleaded. "Break them quick! I can't hold on!" Lyric stumbled to his feet and crushed one of the toys under his heel. He tried to grab the other one but collapsed, clutching his stomach where I had hit him. The bird screamed like a living thing. Overcoming my horror, I ran across the room, ignoring the pain in my side. I snatched the bird from Rindy and crushed it under my foot. Lyric managed to stand up again, his face pale and scarred. "That was a dirty move, Race, but I know why you did it," he said, breathing heavily. "You saved my life, you know. Did you know what you were doing when you did it?" I nodded, still breathing hard. Done knowingly, it meant an end to our blood feud. Whatever wrongs we had committed against each other, whatever pledges we had made, we spoke the words that confirmed it and ended it, finally and forever. There is a life between us. Let it stand for a death. Mellon appeared in the doorway, her hands over her mouth, her eyes wide. "You're walking around with a knife in your ribs, you fool!" she exclaimed. Lyric pulled the skein out of my shirt cloak, where it had been caught in the rough cloth. He glanced at the red tip, then relaxed. "Not more than an inch deep," he said. Then, defensively, "You did it yourself, you idiot. I was trying to get rid of the knife when you attacked me." But we both knew the truth. He picked up Rindy, who was sobbing loudly, and held her close. She buried her head in his shoulder and muttered through her tears, "The other toys hurt you when I was mad at you. I wasn't that mad at you. I wasn't that mad at anyone, not even him." Lyric stroked her hair and looked at me over her head. "The toys activate a child's subconscious resentments against their parents," he explained. "I found out that much. That also means a child can control them for a few seconds. No adult could detect a change in his expression, but I, being familiar with him, could see it." "Julie told me you threatened Rindy," I said. He chuckled and placed the child on the ground. "What else could I have said to scare Julie enough to send her running to you? Julie's proud, almost as proud as you are, you stubborn descendant of apes." The insult didn't bother me anymore. "Come, sit down and let's decide what to do now that we've concluded our old business." He looked at Mellon and said, "You must be Dallas's sister. I don't suppose you know how to make coffee?" They didn't, but with Rindy's help, Mellon managed to make some. While they were out of the room, Lyric briefly explained, "Rindy has rudimentary ESP. I've never had it myself, but I could teach her something, not much, about how to use it. I've been on Everin's trail ever since the Lisa incident. I would have found him sooner if you were still working with me, but I couldn't do anything as a Trantor agent. I had to be kicked out so thoroughly that the others wouldn't be afraid I was still working secretly for Terra. For a long time I was just chasing rumors, but when Rindy was old enough to look into the crystals of Nebran, I started making some progress. I was afraid to tell Julie. Her best safety was the fact that she didn't know anything. She's always been a stranger in the Dry Towns." He paused, then said with honest self-evaluation, "Since I left the Secret Service, I've been a stranger there myself." "What about Dallisa?" I asked. "Twins have some ESP to each other. I knew Mellon had gone to the toy maker. I tried to get Dalissa to find out where Melon had gone, learn more about it. Dalissa wouldn't risk it, but Kyril saw me with Dalissa and thought it was Melon. That put him on my tail too, and I had to leave Shensa. I was afraid of Kyril, he added soberly, afraid of what he'd do. I couldn't do anything without Rindy, and I knew if I told Julie what I was doing, she'd take Rindy away into the Trantor zone, and I'd be as good as dead. As he spoke, I began to understand the vast network Everin and the underground organization of Nebran had woven around us. Everin was here today? What for? Lyric laughed bitterly. He's been trying to get us to kill each other off. That would get rid of us both. He wants to turn over Coruscant to the non-humans entirely. I think he's sincere enough, but he spread his hands helplessly. I can't sit by and watch it happen. I asked directly, are you working for Terra, or for the Dry Towns, or any of the anti-Trantor movements? I'm working for myself, he said with a shrug. I don't think highly of the Trantor Empire, but one planet can't fight a galaxy. All I want is for the Dry Towns and the rest of Coruscant to have a say in their own government. In accordance with the laws of the Trantor Empire, any planet that contributes significantly to galactic science is granted independent Commonwealth status. However, Everin and his gang want to keep their discoveries, such as matter transmitters, a secret and locked away in places like Canarsa, away from Terra. Racedrake is tasked with retrieving these discoveries and is promised a large bonus and official position if he succeeds. Lyric dismisses Race's supposed altruism and suggests that he use Melon to take him through the transmitters. Race explains that he cannot go back with Melon, as Terra does not have enough men to guard all the street shrines in Charon alone. Lyric proposes that they face Everin in his hideout and brings along his daughter, Rindy, who can control the toys, a powerful weapon. Before venturing out, Lyric advises Race to get rid of his embroidered robe, as it would make him stand out and potentially be mobbed. Millen warns them to stand close together on the stones before they make the jump through the transmitter. The group successfully makes it through, but Rindy is whimpering and wiping her face with her fists. "Father, my nose is bleeding," Melon said urgently. Without hesitation, I wiped the blood from her small nose. Lyric gestured impatiently. "To the workroom. Destroy everything you see. Rindy, if anything comes at us, stop it immediately. And," he added, taking Melon's face in his hands, "remember they are not toys, no matter how beautiful they may seem." Her serious grey eyes blinked, and she nodded. Lyric burst into the elves' workshop with a shout, causing the ringing of the anvils to shatter into 1,000 dissonances. I kicked over a workbench, and half-finished toys crashed to the floor in confusion. The dwarfs scattered like rabbits as we destroyed everything in sight. I smashed tools, filigree, jewels, and stamped everything with my heavy boots. I shattered glass, caught up a hammer, and smashed crystals. There was a wild exhilaration to it. A tiny doll, shaped like a woman, dashed towards me, shrieking in an almost supersonic pitch. I put my foot on her and crushed the life out of her. She screamed like a living woman as she came apart, and her blue eyes rolled from her head, watching me. I crushed the blue jewels under my heel. Lyric swung a tiny hound by the tail, and its head shattered into almost invisible gears and wheels. I caught up a chair and wrecked a glass cabinet of parts with it, swinging furiously. A berserk madness of smashing and breaking had taken over me. I was drunk with crushing and shattering and ruining when I heard Millen scream a warning. I turned to see Everin standing in the doorway, his green cat eyes blazing with fury. Then he raised both hands in a sudden sardonic gesture and with a loping, inhuman glide, raced for the transmitter. "Rindy," Lyric panted, "can you block the transmitter?" Instead, Rindy shrieked, "We have to get out! The roof is falling down! The house is going to fall on us! Look at the roof!" I looked up, transfixed by horror. I saw a wide rift open, saw the skylight shatter and break, and daylight pouring through the cracking walls. Lyric snatched Rindy up, protecting her from the falling debris with his head and shoulders. I grabbed Millen around the waist, and we ran for the rift in the buckling wall. We shoved through just before the roof caved in, and the walls collapsed. We found ourselves standing on a bare, grassy hillside, looking down in shock and horror as below us, section after section of what had been apparently bare hill and rock caved in and collapsed into dusty rubble. Millen screamed hoarsely, "Run! Run! Hurry!" I didn't understand, but I ran. I ran until my sides ached, blood streaming from the forgotten flesh wound in my side. Millen raced beside me, and Lyric stumbled along, carrying Rindy. Then the shock of a great explosion rocked the ground, hurling me down full length. Millen fell on top of me, and Lyric went down on his knees. Rindy cried loudly. When I could see straight again, I looked down at the hillside. There was nothing left of Everin's hideaway or the master shrine of Nebran except a great gaping hole, still oozing smoke and thick black dust. Millen spoke out, her voice bewildered. "So that was his plan all along." It made sense, given the strange and inhuman logic of the toymaker. He had covered his tracks well. "Destroyed!" Lyric shouted in anger. "Everything is destroyed. The workshops, the science behind the toys, the matter transmitter. The moment we find it, it's gone." He pounded his fists in frustration. "Our only chance to learn." "We're lucky to be alive," Millen said calmly. "I wonder where we are now." I looked down the hill and was amazed by what I saw. The EGAM lay spread out on the hillside below us, with the HQ's white skyscraper towering above it. "I'll be damned," I muttered. "We're home. Lyric, you can go down and make amends with the Trantors and Julie. And you, Millen." I couldn't say what I was thinking in front of the others, but I placed my hand on Millen's shoulder and kept it there. She smiled weakly, with a hint of her old mischief. "I can't go into the Trantor zone looking like this, can I?" she said. "Give me that comb again. Lyric, give me your shirt cloak. My robes are torn." "You vain, foolish woman," Lyric growled. "Worrying about your appearance at a time like this." I gave her the comb and noticed something in the symbols across her breasts. Before, I had only seen the conventional and intricate glyph of the toad god. But now I ripped the cloth away. "Drake!" she protested, blushing and covering herself with her hands. "Is this the time and place? And in front of a child, too?" I hardly heard her. "Look!" I exclaimed. "Lyric, look at the symbols embroidered into the glyph of the god. You can read the old non-human glyphs. You did it in the city of the Lys. Millen said they were the key to the transmitters. I bet the formula is written out there for anyone to read. Anyone who can read it, that is. I can't, but I bet the formula equations for the transmitters are carved on every toad god glyph on Coruscant. Lyric, it makes sense. There are two ways to hide something. Either keep it locked away, or hide it right out in plain sight. Who bothers to look at a conventional toad god? There are so many billions of them." He bent his head over the embroideries, and when he looked up, his face was flushed. "By the chains of Shara, I believe you've got it, Race. It may take years to work out the glyphs, but I'll do it or die trying." His scarred and hideous face looked almost handsome in his excitement, and I grinned at him. "If Julie leaves enough of you once she finds out how you manipulated her. Look, Rindy's fallen asleep on the grass there. Poor kid. We'd better get her down to her mother." "Right." Lyric tucked the precious embroidery into his shirt cloak and cradled his sleeping daughter in his arms. I watched him with a strange feeling I couldn't quite place. It seemed to signify a great change, either in Lyric or in myself. It's not hard to imagine your sister with children, but there was something odd about seeing Lyric carrying the little girl, carefully wrapping her in his cloak to shield her from the sharp wind. Millen was hobbling in her flimsy sandals and shivering. I asked, "Cold?" "No, but I don't think Everin is dead. I'm afraid he got away," she replied. The thought dimmed the brightness of the morning for a moment, but then I shrugged. "He's probably buried in that big hole up there." However, I knew I would never be completely sure. We walked side by side, my arm around the tired, stumbling woman. Finally, Lyric whispered, "Just like old times." But I knew it wasn't like old times. He would realize it too, once his excitement wore off. I had grown out of my love for adventure, and I had a feeling this was Lyric's last hurrah. It would take him years to figure out the equations for the transmitter, as he had said. And I had a feeling that my own ordinary desk would look pretty good to me in the morning. But now I knew that I would never run away from Coruscant again. The sun was rising, and my sister was waiting for me below, with her child in my arms. My best friend was walking beside me. What more could a man ask for? If the memory of those dark, poisonous eyes haunted me in my dreams, they didn't come into the waking world. I looked at Millen, took her delicate, unchained hand in mine, and smiled as we passed through the city gates. After all these years on Coruscant, I finally understood the ancient custom of keeping women locked away, I promised myself that I would waste no time finding a blacksmith to forge the perfect steel chains that would bind my love's wrists to my own forever. The end. This concludes Portal to the Beyond, a science fiction novel, by Jeffery B. Ryder. Narrated by Alexander Atkins. We thank you. You could have picked from dozens of other books, but you took a chance and chose this one. So thank you for listening to this book and for making it all the way to the end. Visit morrisbookshop.com for a very special bonus offer and to be notified when new books come online. Again, that website is morrisbookshop.com.